The establishment has worked hard to cover up the truth behind Tsai Ing-wen's thesis controversy by launching a cognitive warfare campaign. However, for 2 years now, faithful and steadfast internet investigators have pulled back the curtain on truths like Tsai's 1983 Soochow University tenure and the Boston photograph. With their help, we have exposed Tsai's lies through and through. Even if the University of London continues to cover for Tsai, they can't explain away the findings announced at Professor He Defun's September 9th press conference. The 4 major pieces of evidence revealed then are absolutely irrefutable. Those 4 truths are the key to undoing Tsai's scheme. Let's review. The first major piece of evidence comes from an employment history form Tsai Ing-wen filled out on September 28, 1984. On that form, she specified a thesis title other than the one she's been touting all these years: Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions. This evidence proves that she did not submit a work by the name Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions to the University of London or National Tsai University in June 1983 like she should have. Prosecutor Huang Wei didn't dare include this form in any of his case files against the ThesisGate movement. Did NCCU forget to provide evidence unfavorable to Tsai, or did the prosecutor purposefully leave it out? Huang Wei will have to answer that when we call him to the stand. The second major piece of evidence is a letter from 1987 signed by a P.C. Kennedy from the University of London. That letter is the only legally valid piece of evidence in ThesisGate case files, and yet there are at least 3 different versions of that letter in circulation proving that someone on Tsai's team is engaging in forgery. Furthermore, that letter clearly says that Tsai merely submitted a thesis title, but her lawyers would have the general public believe that it says she submitted a completed thesis. The third major piece of evidence shows how Tsai became an associate professor in 1984 without a thesis, a diploma, or a proper evaluation. It disproves Tsai's insistence that she underwent rigorous testing to get to where she is today. Everyone else who was hired as an associate professor back then underwent thorough evaluation. Only Tsai was excused from screening because the school's president granted her privileges. That's why Tsai Ing-wen was allowed to contribute to NCCU's prestigious law review. NCCU is complicit in Tsai's crimes. The fourth major piece of evidence derives from IALS's thesis-keeping system. IALS keeps copies of all law theses written at the University of London. For the 1983 to 1984 school year, there is no thesis titled Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions. In fact, there is no entry authored by Tsai at all, as is the case in the Oxford University published Economic Journal academic database for the relevant years. It didn't exist before, it doesn't exist now. Tsai's people know that no matter how much they tamper with history, they cannot get a thesis placed in the correct spot under IALS's sequential numbering system. That's why they insist on using other lesser-known legal research indices to make their point. The puzzle behind this mystery is complete. The conclusion is, Tsai Ing-wen does not have a PhD. The UK's Tribunal Court may have ruled that the ICO does not have to publish further information on Tsai's viva or external examiners. But that hasn't stopped faithful investigators from launching their own Freedom of Information Act inquiries. These inquiries have become this scandal's weak point, and we are hell-bent on finding out more. However, what's strange is that the ICO is not willing to endorse information that has already supposedly been revealed. LSE's Information and Records Manager Rachel McGuire already said in an email that Tsai's Viva took place on October 16, 1983. So if that's true, then the ICO may as well admit to it. On September 16, 2021, in Tsai Ing-wen's defamation case against the three scholars, lawyer Lien Yuanlong presented a letter which says Tsai's Viva took place on October 17, 1983, a Monday. We've seen Tsai Ing-wen try to pull similar stunts before, like when she edited the caption on her Boston photograph in the digital copy of her autobiography. Tsai and her people have no shame and will go to any lengths to sustain their lies. We know that they tamper with information, but we didn't think that they tried to change information that's already been revealed. Logically, Tsai should want to reveal as much information as possible to silence her doubters. She should seek to authorize the publication of her Viva date and external examiners. However, Tsai not only classified such information, she constantly changes any records that may reflect the truth. It's been 2 years since we learned of the Sunday Viva date. Now that border records indicate Tsai Ing-wen left the country for London just 1 day before her announced Viva date, the presidential office knew it had to come up with a more believable story. That's why it submitted new records that indicate Tsai's Viva took place 1 day later on October 17, 1983. The presidential office insisted multiple times that LSE is the only authority that has the right to speak on matters pertaining to Tsai's degree. So, what's not to believe about the October 16, 1983 Viva date? Where did Lien learn of the October 17th date? This, of course, is all part of the Tsai organization's plan to fabricate a Viva that doesn't exist. If we go back to 2019, we'll realize that the presidential office revealed its pattern of lying during its September 23, 2019 press conference.
"总统所提交给学校的论文，那么是在这个当年83年的6月提交，那并且已经通过了这个口试，是在当年10月的这个10月中，也就是1983年这个上面证明蔡英文女士已经于1983年的6月提交博士论文，并且10月中接受口试。
The purpose of the presidential office's press conference was to cast off the media by giving them superficial responses to legitimate questions. However, if the presidential office had a precise date for when Tsai Ing-wen submitted her thesis, then why wouldn't it have the date of her all-important Viva? This press conference was never a serious attempt to address problems. Because of that, the presidential office only gave a vague answer when addressing Tsai's Viva date, mid-October. After the press conference, American journalist Michael Richardson filed a Freedom of Information inquiry with LSE. LSE Information and Records Manager Rachel McGuire told Richardson on October 21, 2019, that Tsai's Viva took place on October 16, 1983. Michael Richardson leveraged the UK's Freedom of Information Act to acquire Tsai's Viva date, which shouldn't be private or personal information. That's why LSE responded to the inquiry so generously. There was no issue with national identity or legitimate interest. So why was it that when the issue went to the tribunal court, the Freedom of Information Act inquiry suddenly became about personal information and legitimate interest? When LSE responded to Michael Richardson, the school simply thought he was an independent journalist. So, like the presidential office, it gave him flimsy information in an attempt to bat him away. That's where the October 16th Viva date came from. However, a Sunday Viva is unbelievable and indefensible. That's why, after Michael Richardson's inquiry, the University of London launched a 6-week internal review and it never spoke of the Viva again. It's clear that the University of London is privy to what Tsai Ing-wen and her people are up to. Since then, the University of London has adopted a policy of silence to remove itself from the potential damage this scandal presents to the school. At this point in time, Tsai Ing-wen's Soochow University tenure hadn't yet been revealed. That's why Tsai's organization had no problem backing the October 16, 1983 Viva date. After all, it's better to have a random Viva date than no date at all. But after immigration records indicating the Tsai sisters left Taiwan on October 15, 1983 and returned 2 weeks later surfaced, Lien Yuanlong had no choice but to change the narrative to better fit the information. However, the border records presented are also fake. The Border Authority tells us that records prior to 1988 can't be accessed because its digital database isn't completely up to date. However, the border authorities managed to spit out a couple of entry and exit dates for the Tsai sisters. We're in the midst of formally accusing the border official in charge of the released paperwork of fraud. Tsai Ing-wen has already sullied the good name of so many hardworking public servants. These shenanigans must stop. The University of London also refuses to endorse the two people LSE said were Tsai's external examiners. LSE legal representative Kevin Haynes pulled out a number of documents which identified Michael John Elliott and Leonard H. Lee as Tsai Ing-wen's examiners. However, both Elliott and Lee would only qualify as internal examiners, which goes against Viva rules. Every Viva must have at least one external examiner. Tsai Ing-wen's people keep close tabs on ThesisGate investigative efforts. They change their narrative constantly to fit our findings, no matter how shameless that might come off as. Lien Yuanlong says Tsai remembers that economist Dr. Richard Dale sat on her Viva review panel. However, if Tsai's memory is to be believed, then what should we make of the presidential office's claim that LSE is the only authority that can attest to the authenticity of Tsai's degree? Let's set aside the reliability of Tsai's memory for a moment. The inclusion of Dr. Richard Dale's name now is to address the lack of an external examiner in evidence presented so far. However, Tsai's memory is not a reliable information source, and the only reason why her legal counsel dared to use it is to leave her some wiggle room. However, in Huang Wei's case files, we find Michael John Elliott and Leonard H. Lee's names in Tsai's employment records from 1990. Huang Wei and national security organizations conjured that information long ago to address the question over Tsai's examiners. Kevin Haynes only served to act as a corroborating party from LSC to present supporting information for the manufactured Viva date and examiners. However, national security organizations failed to include an external examiner, a glaring and detrimental mistake. That's why Dr. Richard Dale's name surfaced. However, Dale was never documented in any previous records as an examiner. His presence only surfaced in Tsai's memory. Is this possible? Could Tsai, who had just completed her Viva, have simply omitted Dale's name from her employment records because she forgot, only to then suddenly remember his presence 37 years later? Who would believe such outrageous lies? But what kind of short-term memory is so unreliable that it can't remember all of a person's examiner's names? Not only that, but Tsai forgot the name of the most pivotal external examiner. If Tsai's Viva really did have 3 examiners, then why did she only include 2 names on her employment forms? She would have been able to find the names of her examiners in her personal Viva records, so that information should have been readily available for a recent graduate such as herself. This inconsistent flow of information is a bad look for the national security officials covering for Tsai. In the face of such flimsy evidence, anyone with a shred of honesty can see what's truly going on here. Lien Yuanlong can change the plot in ridiculous ways all he wants. His actions will spell trouble for the public prosecutors involved in ThesisGate cases. How will prosecutors handle the addition of a new examiner name when they've already pressed charges against the defense? Doesn't this new information completely shake up their initial indictment? We can't help but feel worried for prosecutor Liu Cheng-wu, who is handling this case. It's going to be hard for us to lose. Even so, we'll continue to lobby for utter and complete transparency in ThesisGate procedures. Dr. Dennis Pang continues to push for live streaming ThesisGate court proceedings. Not only that, but he also actively seeks charges of breaking election laws for himself. As far as the live streaming request goes, a judge once told Dr. Pang she'd seek the opinion of prosecutor Liu. Liu gave a perfunctory response saying he didn't think it was necessary. However, the ultimate decision does not sit with Liu. It is with the judge. It's clear the judge and Liu are tossing this issue between themselves. Dr. Pang seeks a charge for violating election laws because it was included in Huang Wei's initial indictment of Dr. Pang, but has since been removed. Prosecutor Liu has not responded to this request, which makes us think that someone is calling the shots from behind the scenes. This case involves a sitting president suing 3 scholars for libel. At stake is the integrity of the country's leader. It is the biggest story the country has seen in a decade and surely deserves the people's participation. However, it's being relegated to simple court procedures with limited appeal options. Does the president's reputation mean that little in the eyes of the law? No matter how you cut it, whether from a prevention, societal, or privacy point of view, the only person who would need tangible privacy protections is Dr. Dennis Pang. He is the one lobbying for streaming court procedures, so what reason does the court have to deny his request? A judge isn't all-powerful, and the establishment most certainly should take every step to be transparent. Proper judicial reforms begin with streaming ThesisGate court trials. The ThesisGate movement doesn't insist on live streaming court procedures for no reason. ThesisGate entails much more than the cases currently circulating the system. Dozens of government officials and even a few judges have been implicated in this scandal. Live streaming all of those trials will prevent the possibility of corrupt dealings in the future. In the case proving Tsai Ing-wen doesn't have a thesis, Judge Zhang Yonghui still refuses to recuse herself. Judge Zhou Yuxuan was the only judge who extended fair treatment to a ThesisGate court case. She actually requested testimony from the University of London. But for her steadfast work, she drew the ire of her superiors and was put on parental leave. Judge Tsai Yuxuan, who monitored Judge Zhou in the lead-up to her departure, replaced her. The odds that Judge Tsai replaced Judge Zhou by random chance is less than 1%. This shows that there is something fishy going on in the Taipei District Court, and head judge Huang Guozong is complicit. The only reason why Judge Zhang Yonghui would not recuse herself is if she has political motivations. There is no other reasonable explanation. First, a court case involving the president is a high-profile affair. It not only draws public scrutiny, but also draws attention from superiors. So, when Judge Zhang was first assigned to the case proving Tsai's thesis doesn't exist, she quickly threw it out. But the high courts returned the case to the district level on an appeal where Judge Zhang was, once again, set to hear it. This would have been a good place for Judge Zhang to recuse and remove herself from the situation entirely. However, she insisted on staying, going so far as to telling lawyer Jim Chang that he was the one that needed to remove himself. In the end, Professor Peng pretended that he had to go to the bathroom while in the courtroom so that he could file a case against Judge Zhang to create a conflict of interest and establish a solid reason to remove her from the case. Notwithstanding, every decision Judge Zhang has made so far does not make any sense. Second, the decision Judge Zhang handed down on January 15, 2020 reinforces the idea that the existence of a degree proves the existence of a thesis. Her decision included a statement saying she believes that Tsai's degree exists. However, Judge Zhang completely overlooked the existence of the thesis. Lawyer Li Zhenhua had already emphasized the legal relevance of the case's terms. He reminded Judge Zhang that clarification beyond a shadow of a doubt was needed. Even then, Judge Zhang refused to call the case to trial. Reporters learned that the case had been dismissed even before the judge had a chance to publish an official statement. The courts push a unified front using the media to saturate the communication channels with their narrative, just like Huang Wei did. Third, Judge Zhang Yonghui didn't once bring the case to trial. There were no hearings of any kind. Her decision was issued swiftly and without any kind of procedure. However, Judge Zhang had no reason to push out a decision so quickly. Yet she delivered one on January 15, 2020. This was clearly an effort to grant Tsai another win in the wake of her presidential election victory. On December 11, 2019, Judge Zhang ordered Tsai to submit a plea to the court. The thing is, even before Tsai submitted a plea, Judge Zhang had already dismissed the case. Why? Because someone higher up ordered her to do so. Today, Judge Zhang insists on hearing the case and bringing it to court. All of the minor details indicate that she is facing political pressure. ThesisGate is no longer a matter of simple fraud. Furthermore, we've proven already that Tsai's thesis doesn't exist. If the Taipei District Court is allowed to keep pulling off such shenanigans, then Taiwan will never experience true justice. The Taiwanese public has always had a high level of distrust for its judicial system. Taipei District Court head Huang Guozong must take responsibility for that reality. His case distribution and judge appointment systems clearly indicate favoritism and behind-the-scenes manipulation. All of the ThesisGate court cases very clearly grant Tsai the advantage. Such awful court administration has sullied Taiwan's judicial system. Dr. Pang has ultimately decided to levy administrative action against Huang Guozong and reveal every last ugly truth. It doesn't matter how many roadblocks ThesisGate court cases run into. Zhou Yuxuan and the High Court have proven that there are still judges out there willing to do good. The purpose of live streaming court trials isn't to sway public opinion. Instead, it is meant to take weight off of any judges facing political pressure. We believe that there are many judges willing to fulfill their proper duty, and live streaming trials is a way for them to do so. Live streaming court trials will lay everything to bear and deter political interference in the law. ThesisGate is not only rewriting history, it is creating history as well. The Taipei District Court has been inundated with petition forms advocating for live streaming trials. Let us continue this effort to be heard. Fill the Taipei District Court's phones, faxes, and emails with your opinions, letting them know that the people want justice. So long as the courts refuse to stream trials, then we will continue fighting. This is a new chapter in justice.